You talk about full circle moments. When I first started my podcast career, people didn't understand what it was. And when I reached out to this young man, it was incredible because he's the godfather. He is the man as far as when it comes to podcasting. Now he's a published author and also just about to be, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but he's about to be a TEDx speaker too on one of the biggest platforms that you can imagine. And it was incredible for me because he spent time with me at a very early stage in this podcasting career, and he didn't treat me like a newcomer. He treated me as if I was on top of the world, and he was always curious. He was the one always listening. And it was interesting because when I remember getting the pre-production, and it talked about a couple of things, and I didn't realize that he was coaching me for the future. He was talking about shorter 30 to 1.5 minute answers. And at first I thought, why would someone want to limit my answers? But it was so the conversation could continue on. And when we sat on the podcast, it was incredible because for me, most of the time a podcast host was all about themselves. But he started to ask questions. And when he asked the questions, he actually listened. And he wasn't listening to respond. He was listening to learn. He was catching things that I couldn't understand. He had done the research, and it just really set a foundation for my whole entire podcasting career. So it's my honor not only to bring on, I think, one of the best in the industry, but also a guy that I get a chance to be able to call my friend, and he has the baddest beard game on the planet, Mr. Matt Halloran. I get a chance to be able to share him with you. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Shut the F up and listen. Welcome, Mr. Matt. How you doing, buddy?
Dude, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, if I start dancing, is the music going to quit? And I'm going to be mid-dance, and I don't think anybody wants to see that. That's such great hype music, dude. I love that intro.
Hey, that's my brother, right? And so most people don't know that I have an unfair advantage. His name is Brad Dunn, Done Right Productions. And he's my brother-in-law, my little brother, but he is one of the baddest filmmakers, storytellers, and brand. Like, he takes a brand and pushes it to the next level. So anybody who likes the podcast, who even remotely follows what we're doing, it's because of Brad Dunn. I want to give him a huge shout out. And awesome. Matt, you guys should work together. He is an incredible human.
He's now on my list, brother. I'm going to go ahead and reach out to him as soon as we get done. So.
Hey, shut the F up and listen, man. I mean, when I looked and saw that, it just punched me in the face. Tell me about this, man.
Well, so as you said in the introduction, so I've done over 1,000 podcasts, well over 1,000 podcasts now. And it's always funny to me as the host of the majority of those podcasts, probably about 800 of those podcasts. When I would get done with the show, the guests would always say, man, I can't believe I said this, or holy crap, you were really listening to me. And wow, nobody's ever asked me those questions before. And it really just made me pause and think, okay, so I'm doing something. And the pivotal point was, I'd gotten done interviewing this very, very high, it's somebody you know, really super highfalutin PR guy. And I think I said 3 sentences in 30 minutes. And we get done with the show, and he's like, dude, that was the best podcast I've ever been on in my entire life. I'm going to tell everybody about your show. And I was like, I didn't say anything. And then Kelly, I went back and I listened to it. And I mean, seriously, it was a question. And then I just sat back. He didn't follow that rule that you were talking about earlier. And then all of a sudden, as you know, when you are open to the universe of ideas and you say, okay, something's going on here. And then it's revealed. That's where everything came up. And then I remembered my grandmother saying, is how I opened the book. Matthew, you were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you would listen twice as much as you talk. And what she was telling me very kindly was, Matt, you just need to shut the F up and listen. And so that's the origin of all of it, man.
Well, what prompted you to write the book? Because as you know, anytime you write a book, every person that comes near you for the next 5 years comes up and says, oh, I wrote a book too. And then you'll say, oh, really? When did you write the book? They're like, oh, well, I haven't written it down, but I've got all the ideas in my head. The difference between the person who actually does it and the person who talks about it, tell me about this difference and why was it so important for you to actually put a pen to paper?
So this is my third book, right? And so the first book that I wrote, it was published by Bloomberg Finance. It's for financial advisors specifically. My second book was a self-published work that was just a train wreck. And I've been trying to get it literally removed, even though it's really, really good, but what they produced was just not really good. And so what made me want to do this was I met, well, you might know him. His name is Rob Howard. He runs it's called Brand Rehab is the name of his company. He's the one who rebranded our company Proudmouth to Proudmouth. The guy is one of the greatest branding person. Great book. It's called Fix. It's how to create a cult brand. And so Rob and I were talking and he said, Matt, you need to have an identity outside of work. And I was like, well, what does that mean? He's like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to author another book. And he's like, you need to do that. And this was probably 3 years ago, Kelly. Okay. And then this epiphany happened. And then I started workshopping these stories from my life. And what I wanted to do was, there's all of these books out there on research, right? Where, huge Yale, Harvard, Princeton scholars write books on listening. And I wanted to do the exact opposite. As you know, I am the contrarian in everything, right? I'm always going to try to find the opposite of what is mainstream. And so these are all really, really personal stories. And when I sent out my ARC, my advanced reader copies, to friends of mine who've known me, some of them since I was like 16, they said to me, dude, I didn't know that happened to you. And I was like, okay, I'm onto something here. And I just grinded it out, dude. You have to, it's more than just coming up with ideas. I wrote the book, much like you did. And then guess what we both do? We rewrite the book. Because, that's just part of the flipping process, man.
Yeah. Tell me about, you were talking about Nebraska before we started recording. We were just having a conversation. And that was something that, every time I get around you, I get a chance to be able to know a little something different. My brother, the thing that I didn't tell you is my oldest brother actually lives there in Omaha. Shout out to Guy and Naomi. I love you guys so much. He's my brother and now a business partner with me. And so tell me about that experience in Oklahoma, because I think those are the ones that really connect people to Matt.
Yeah. So when I graduated from Western, so I live back in Kalamazoo now, which is where I grew up. I graduated with a degree in applied ethics, which is like, you're never going to get a job, dude, because nobody wants to be told, what's right and what's wrong.
Hold on. When you were choosing majors, what the hell were you thinking? Like, what were you thinking, Matt?
Well, I'm not great at math. Okay. I wasn't great at science. Yeah. Right. And I took a class at community college on philosophy. It was actually the philosophy of love. And I was like, holy crap, you can study love, you can study philosophy. And then all of a sudden, Socrates and Plato and Descartes and Nietzsche and all these people just started coming into my life. And I was like, dude, I totally want to study this, because at the time, and so this was in the mid 90s, ethics as a discipline was really blowing up. And so there's a school at University of Montana in Missoula that had a PhD program. And I had really connected with this mentor professor of mine. And so that's how it really cascaded. So my undergraduate degree is in applied ethics and in broadcast communications, because I've done radio since I was a little kid in high school. So I got a paid internship, which again, crazy, a philosophy paid internship in Omaha, Nebraska. So I got married, and a month later, my wife and I packed up and left. She had never been away from her family. I had, because I was in the Navy. I was really itching to get out of Kalamazoo anyway. And so we lived in Omaha, had a couple of jobs after that, which there's a million stories about working biomedical ethics, which, by the way, 2 of them are in the book. But then we worked at a place called Boys Town. And so my wife and I lived with 36 at-risk teenage boys over a 4.5-year time frame. And there's a story in the book about that. Really,
hold on, Matt. How do you convince your wife to live with 36? Like, how do you convince this? You got to have a great relationship. Tell us how that conversation goes for you to convince her to actually do that.
So she had to convince me.
What?
I didn't want to do it. So she was at University of Nebraska, Omaha, studying to be a teacher, science teacher, which she just recently retired from. And while she was there, she had a fellow student in one of her classes. I don't remember which one. I really should know that. And so they were talking about what kind of schools that they wanted to teach in. And Angela, my wife, said, I want to teach it at at-risk school. And that just like, do you know about Boys Town? And this woman was a guardian ad litem, which is a person who helps make decisions for kids who their parents are out of the picture, a court appointed. And she was a guardian ad litem and said, listen, I want to introduce you to somebody. So she introduced my wife to this couple, because they're all couples who work at Boys Town, husband and wife. And so Angela really hit it off with this woman. And my wife comes home and she goes, we're going out to dinner. We're very tight, my wife and I. We had we still have a very small group of friends, people that are close. Now we're wildly social, but we have a very small core group of friends. It's like, who in the hell are we going out to dinner with? And she's like, well, we're going out to the dinner with these people who work at Boys Town. And it's like, okay, what's going on? She's like, trust me, let's go. And so we sit down and we have dinner at this family's house. So I walk in from nothing, Kelly, into a room or a house, a mansion in Omaha, Nebraska, with a husband and wife and 8 teenage boys eating dinner at a table. And, just I'm watching what's going on and the teaching that's going on. And these guys have point cards and all of this sort of stuff. And when we get done, and my wife said, I want to do this. And I said, well, God, we're in a lease. We're leasing a house at the time. I had a job. I was working at the largest nursery in Omaha, Nebraska, plant nursery, and really liked my job. And she's like, let's just go through the interview process and see what happened. And here's when everything switched for me. We're sitting in a room, person sitting across from us, and he asks my wife a question. Ooh. What do you like about your husband? Oh, so you never ask nobody ever asks your spouse that question, dude, ever. And if they do, it's usually when you're not there. And my wife's sitting right next to me, and I hear these things that she's saying about what she likes about me. And oh my God, heart filled with joy, getting emotional. I'm a softie anyway. And that was it. They approved us. We went through 2 months of intense training, 8 hours a day, where we learned what the rules and regulations were, the behavioral psychological model. That's how it went.
What were the challenging things? Because we look at I was just talking with one of my friends. Her husband worked pro bono on a case for 11 years. Or actually, the guy was in prison for 11 years. He got the case. He worked on the case for, I believe, the better part of 30 years, almost 30 years.
Oh my God.
And then got the guy exonerated out of prison. So the guy is named Craig Coley. He was in prison for 39 years. He was in prison for longer than Nelson Mandela. And you hear this story and you're like, oh my gosh, this story of redemption. And he got, he's living a life in Carlsbad here in California. It's unbelievable. But I got to talk to the wife and I was like, tell me the hard part of this, because you as a wife, this guy was in prison for 39 years. There's a cultural difference. He got out and he took a taxi from prison to your house tell me the wife's side. And she was like, it was a little strange. It was tough. What was the reality part of this as opposed to the, you know, the Cinderella story of you guys, you know, working with these kids?
I got to be a father to kids who generally didn't have a dad. I mean, so I grew up with a very absent father, which is a whole nother 3 hours of conversation that you and I could have. So my goal was to, when and if I ever had children, was to be the greatest father I could possibly, because I didn't have that, right? I got to do it with 36 freaking kids, dude. 36 kids. And what I found over and over again is they don't want you to tell them what to do. They don't want you to give them advice. They want you to just be present, truly present. And that's what I did. My role there was very, very different than Angela's role, because all of them had generally mistreated their mothers, because single mothers, right? 90% of our kids had single mothers.
Okay.
And so my wife took the brunt of everything. And I was like this thing that they never had. I remember I hugged a kid. You had to ask permission because, you know, again, we were trying to, you know, keep everything really above the board.
Yeah.
And this kid was having a really rough day, Kelly, and his name was Ken. And I said, hey, look, I don't know if this would help, but can I give you a hug? And he started crying. I was like, oh, God, damn it. I screwed something up, man. Like, this is a trigger I didn't know about or whatever. And so he's crying and he walks over to me and I give him a hug. And he steps back, tears streaming down his face. He goes, I've never been hugged by a man. That was my life for 4.5 years, dude. Like, things like that happened weekly. And it changed my whole life.
What do you say to the people that, you know, when you're people have the desire to do things like that, but they don't know where to start, right? They want to impact somebody, but they really don't know how to start. I remember I was sitting at the pool one time and we were doing haircuts for the homeless and we were collecting socks and doing this stuff. And a person, like 4 people were like, I'll donate money. And I said, well, why don't you just come down and hang out? And they were like, oh, no. I mean, I don't have time, but I could give you money. I think people want to do that because they don't know where to start. How can a person start in their community? Maybe if there's not a house with 36 kids, how can they start?
You got to start small. I'm not that guy. Full disclosure.
Yeah. You start big. You always start big, man.
Dude, I jump in with both feet. Everything I do, that's my whole life. It scares the hell out of everybody I know, but that's just who I am.
Yeah.
But I really recommend that you start small. And one of the things that you can do is you start close, right? So, you know, there's this great saying that our friend Jerome says is, who are your 6? So everybody really should have 6 really, really unbelievably close relationships that if you need them, you can pick up the call and you know that those people are going to show up in your life. So those 6, you need to start by showing them love, appreciation, and support. Because this is a muscle. This is a habit. There's conditioning involved because it doesn't always go well. You know, I'm sharing warm, fuzzy, beautiful stories. Dude, I had a kid throw a brick at my wife. You know, we had a kid who threw a 3-day temper tantrum. He yelled for 3 days straight at the top of his lungs. We have no idea how he didn't lose his voice. I have been called every negative word you could call as a straight white man. And boy, I didn't even know some of them, bro. Right. But I think you really need to start small. And then after you start small with the people who you're really comfortable with, that's when you start bringing it out into the world. And I've actually been sharing a whole bunch of stuff on Instagram about this recently because of conversations like this. And I believe that you should just randomly walk up to somebody who looks like they need it, tell them you love them, and walk away. So Kelly, I have a board over on my wall here that is just what I need to remind myself to be every day. And my goal is to spread magic and love into the world somehow every day. And whether that's telling somebody I love them, whether that's just being really nice to somebody in the grocery store, or just saying hi and asking somebody how they're doing to see how they're doing instead of I'm fine. I don't deal with I'm fine because that's not how I ask the question. But I think that's where you go. You start small with your six, your group, and then you start doing more random things that just allow you to expand that muscle and realize that it's not all going to be, rainbows and sunshine and roses, but it's something that you really have to commit to. And if more of us did that, Kelly, I'm going to digress for a moment because I know you and I know your audience. When I was growing up, I was raised Episcopalian, on track, by the way, to become a priest. So I don't know if you had known that about me.
I didn't know
So
that.
I was an altar boy, church camp, ran stuff, leader, all of that stuff. And I remember I was sitting down with Father Mark, who was the mentor priest that I had at the time. And I said that, hey, I was at school and this person came up to me and started evangelizing and witnessing to me. And it was really, really uncomfortable. And he said, you know what, Matt, they should know you're a Christian by your love.
Mm.
I was like, damn, what? He said, listen, the best thing in the world you can do is never tell anybody. That's like, because that's very personal, and that's the personal relationship you have with your higher power.
Yeah.
But what you should do is you should show them you're a Christian by your love. And I live by that mantra every day. Every day. I'm not going to tell you anything about my own whatevers because that can be contentious, but I am going to absolutely tell you that I love you. I mean it, because the models that I want to live by, even earthly models, Mr. Rogers, Bob Ross, right? Steve Irwin, these people who brought love and joy into our world in our lifetime. I'm not saying I'm ever going to be one of them, but man, I'm going to try to be like them every day.
So most of the time when I see somebody that serves people at the place or the level that you do, which, I mean, when I think of you, I think about listening, right? And this was before the book. This was before anything. You had my brother on the podcast, and I want to thank you for that. His practice has gone through the roof, by the way. I mean, that guy he's unbelievable. And he's done it with no marketing at all. He's done it through word of mouth, which has been awesome. So big shout out to Rob, and I love you and I'm proud of you. So when I think about listening with you, most of the time people serve people from what they lacked is what I found over time and spending time with people on the podcast, things like that. And when did you, or have you made that connection with, you mentioned about your father and being absentee, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Did you connect that with you weren't listened to, you weren't heard, you weren't seen, you didn't receive that love, so you want to go give that to everybody else?
There's a lot to what you just said there, dude. So okay. So first off, the reason why listening is so important to me is because I was always the one talking. And I'm good at it. I'm really good at it, dude. I'm a keynote speaker. I go, people pay me money to go hear me speak. But I can't learn anything when I'm talking. And that really, so there's a part in the book called Listening to Learn. And that's such a huge, that was the biggest epiphany for me. There's two. Number one was, if you're talking, you don't learn anything. So just shut up. And dude, you can learn unbelievable things from people you talk to every day if you just shut up and let them talk. And then the second part of it was, everybody listens to respond. They don't listen to listen. And when you break that sentence down, what's happening is, in this, we have this issue as podcast hosts and people who create content, who do interviews, is we're always waiting to ask the next question. But what happens is, so I'll say something, Kelly, and you'll be like, oh, I want to ask something about that. From wherever that point is until the end of my talking, you just lost all of it. You did. It's just human nature. You can't hold two things in your brain at once. So, oh my God, I can't wait to ask Matt this question. I'm not saying you're doing this, but I'm just using you as an example. You just lost the other half of what I said. But when it comes to love, um, I was very, very loved as a child. I have constantly, dude, the first time that I started going around and telling people I love them, I was probably 9 or 10.
Uh-huh.
Um, and just, "Look, I love you." And people, what are you talking about? And Kelly, my foundation has always been, if you can unconditionally hate people for no reason at all, I can unconditionally love you for no reason at all. And I've tried to live my life by that for almost 50 years now.
What do you think? Where do you think when you were talking about that, you were talking a lot and then there was that epiphany. What do you think, where do you think that stemmed from? Where do you think
Podcasting.
was that? Well, no, I mean, even
Freaking
before,
podcasting. Yeah.
before
Wow.
that, speaking, things like that, like the one talking, was there a point in your life where you didn't feel heard? So you needed to make your voice louder? Cause this is an art form that I've seen where Greg Reed taught me this and it was nuts. Right. So we were in a crowd and it was probably about 400. And I watched him do something masterfully, but I've never ever seen, because most of the time a speaker, when they go out and there's people in the audience and they're still speaking, what they'll do is they'll elevate their voice, they'll elevate their voice, they'll elevate their voice. Greg went the opposite way. And he taught me that, where when the crowd was loud, you started to go lower. And he started to go lower until he was at a whisper. And he said, "If you can hear my voice, raise your hand." And it took 250, 300 people, and it completely silenced them. All of them turned and turned the attention but most of the time as human beings, when things get loud, we want to get louder so we could get heard.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think caused that for you in your life in the beginning, wanting to put it out there?
When I joined the Navy at 17. My mom actually had to sign the paperwork for me to get in because I literally wasn't told enough. And I knew I was going to join the Navy when I was 16 because we had a recruiter come to my high school and talk to our physics class. When I got on my ship, I met the chief bosun's mate, and he said, "We're going to war in 2 weeks. And if we get hit anywhere on this ship when we're loaded down with ammunition, we're going to blow up in a 2 square mile radius. Welcome aboard." And I realized very quickly that I was really in charge of my own destiny at that point, and I needed to do whatever I possibly could to not freaking blow up during a war. So I volunteered for everything. So I, again, went in the exact opposite because, you know, there's funny sayings in the Navy, you're never going to volunteer for anything again. And, but I volunteered for everything. And so right away, I started standing all of these watches. So I just turned 18. We were going out to the first Gulf War. I was on a big ammunition replenishment ship, and I was standing sounding and security watch, which you take a plumb bob and you drop it down into these ballast tanks to make sure that the ship is going to stay on ballast. It's pretty boring. And I was standing the mid watch, which is from 11:45 a.m. to 3:45, or 11:45 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. a.m. You know what I mean? Freaking middle of the night, right? Sorry about that. And as I'm walking around, it's right at the beginning of my watch. I'm heading up to the forward part of the ship. I had 2 places I had to check, and I heard screaming, yelling, just like mad screaming. And now we're in the middle of, we're probably at this point still in the Atlantic. We're about to go through the Straits of Gibraltar, so we were pretty close to the Mediterranean. So the seas weren't great. I mean, you have to learn how to walk and not fall over and die. And so I start walking up to the front part of the ship, and it's called the forecastle. And the yelling is getting more intense. And then I heard something. And if you've ever experienced this, you're going to know what this sound is immediately, which is the loading of a gun, a pistol specifically. So we had 45s when I was in the Navy. Anyway, that's just the weapon that we had. And I heard it. I didn't just hear it load. I heard him chamber around, which is a very distinct sound. Okay. And, and when you're in boot camp, you learn how to shoot all the weapons and anything. And then the shouting stopped. And I ran up to the front of the ship and I was like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And this guy turns and looks at me, tears just streaming down his face, holding this loaded gun. And I was like, look, dude, I don't know what's going on, man, but listen, we've got the next 4 hours together to talk to me, because whatever's going on, I'm here. So he, anyway, took the round out of the weapon, put it back in his clip, put the holster back, gun back in the holster. And I followed him around. Luckily, his watch and my watch were synchronous. So we had to go up to the bridge at the same time to go ahead and report our findings. He would say all conditions normal, and I would hand them my list. And I didn't talk for 3 hours. 3 hours. Just, and all of a sudden at the end, he looked at me. Now, nowadays, I think he probably would have given me a hug, but that's not the social construct that we had in the military at the time. I'm still friends with him today, by the way. And I realized that all up until then, everybody I just talked at everybody. I never talked with people, I talked at them. And that was the seminal moment where I learned that I needed to learn how to just listen and be present for my fellow humans.
How'd you come up with this concept that I was reading? I was reading in your book, and you talked about hang gliders, water skiers, snorkelers, and scuba divers. Like, how the hell does that, like, when I saw that, I was like, Matt, where are you taking me here? And it was interesting. And when I read it, it was phenomenal. But tell me two things. Number one, I want to know about hang gliders, water skiers, snorkelers, and scuba divers. But then I want to know how the hell you were able to make that connection, because I think it's amazing, Matt.
Yeah. So I just, I'm a big fan of psychosocial hacks, right? So ways that you can accelerate the learning process of who you're sitting across from in order to be able to communicate more effectively, because the first law of communication is message sent is not necessarily message received. And all of your listeners have experienced that in their entire life. Wait a second. That's not what I said. Yeah, that's what they heard, right? And so I wanted to find a hack, and I also wanted to find a hack that had really strong visual representation and with social anchoring and emotional anchoring, so that you could say, "Oh crap, yeah, I mean, this guy's a parachuter." You know, this is going to be just a very, very surface, very cordial, "How you doing? I'm fine. High five, walk away." Right. But the interesting thing about those different kinds of communicators is, just because today I'm talking to a parachuter doesn't mean that you're not going to be a snorkeler the next time I meet you. And I need to be able to identify that very quickly, because if I approach you and you come to me as a snorkeler and want to have moderately deep conversation, right? But I think you're here, I just blew that whole thing. So that's really where it came from. It went through huge iterations, Kelly. I don't even remember the first. I think the first ones that I came up with were like superheroes. And that didn't really play very well in the marketplace. And then I was using
which superhero? Hold on, which superheroes did you use, and how did you connect them to listening?
Dude. I mean, so
did you use Gary and Ace from the Ambiguously Gay Duo?
I think I had like I think I had Dr. Strange, as one of the, deeper thinkers, or the ancient one. And so after the superheroes, I think I went to like Jungian. So I went really philosophical on that, the Jungian archetypes, and that didn't work well. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm talking about depths of communication, which is what these illustrate. Let's use something that everybody knows. So it's parachuters, it's hang gliders, it's water skiers, it's snorkelers, and then it's scuba divers, right? And so it's just a quick hack on how you can find out to what depth a person wants to communicate with you by how they answer a very simple question, which is, how are you doing? Not how are you doing? How are you doing? And by asking that simple question in that manner, I'm opening a door. Because I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about how are you. And if you're a water skier, and water skiers are the people who are holding on for dear life in conversation. They want to have the conversation, but they know if they're going to get deep, they're going to have to let go of that rope. And I don't know. I live in Michigan, dude. We all water ski a whole bunch, go at lakes everywhere. When you let go of the rope, it hurts, bro. Like you hit the water, right? And then you go underwater and then you come up for air and you're bobbing and everything's fine. But there's that moment of panic. And in all of us, you know, especially when somebody wants to know how you're doing, there's a little bit of panic. But once you can get them to let go, they're really comfortable with bobbing in the water, just waiting for the boat to come back to pick them up, which is their release where they can exit, right? So that's where water skiers came from. And I mean, I'm more than happy to dive into each of those, but you know, we don't have that much time.
Well, it's genius though, man. I mean, it's genius as you went through. The one though that I didn't say was the skydivers part. So the skydivers, hang gliders, water skiers, snorkelers, and scuba divers. I mean, it hit home. Speaking of drowning and pain, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. Because I'm telling you, for years and years, all my Detroit and all my Michigan people that hold up their hand and point at it and say, I'm from here, all those people always told me this year, this next year, this next year, this next year. It seems like this year might be the year. Are you hopeful?
Oh, dude, of course I'm hopeful. I'm the epitome of hopeful. I've had hope for them since I was in high school, and they've sucked since Barry Sanders left, dude. Yeah, I absolutely have. And honestly, and this goes beyond just the Lions, but I have so much hope for Detroit. The transformation that Detroit has gone through, not just from a sporting perspective, but also from what the community has become there is, man, it is. Detroit's awesome. It's safe. It's clean. It's fantastic. People are getting along from every race, religion, and color. I mean, it's freaking beautiful. And I'm hoping that the sports teams will continue to ride this momentum that the city has really created in this huge revitalization of not just downtown, but the surrounding areas. So, yeah.
So with this listing, I want to go back to that because you really, in your book, you really laid out a blueprint for listening, not just for a conversation, but I see it as far as business wise. But let's talk about specifically the podcasting side, because podcasting, we're sitting in a place where it's never really been before. Our country was, and if you're not awake on this, podcast shaped one of the biggest things that happened this last year, single-handedly.
Yeah.
What business or person should not have a podcast?
So we have something that we really firmly believe in, which is the perfect content formula, which is storytelling, education, entertainment, call to action. And you have to be able to fire on all four of those things. Even if you're boring, you still have to have some sort of level of entertainment quality to your boringness. Like, what is that one? It's something Hardcore History, dude. That dude is boring as hell, but he's interesting as you. Oh my God. Like you learn things in a 4-hour podcast that you're like, oh my God, I never knew that. So first off, if you are in business, if you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a podcast, because podcasting nowadays is the foundation. Kelly, you're a living proof of this, bro. You do the show, right? Some, 37 minutes is about the ideal podcast length now, just so you know. Okay. That's what research shows. Then you take that show and you have a whole month's worth of social media posts, video, like what you do, video clips and, social media posts and still shots with quote memes and quotes from super smart thing that you or your guest said. Dude, that's the model. And in podcasting is so efficient. It's so efficient. You sit down for an hour, you talk about stuff. Of course, you need to be prepared. You need to be warmed up. And I'm very specific about the fact that you can't half-ass a podcast. You have to whole-ass the podcast. You don't phone this in, bro. This is a show. You're going to show up. I know you do this. Dude, I'm jumping around over there for 5 minutes before I come on the show. So my energy's up, my heart rate's up. I'm practicing my breathing, all of the things that I need to do to be a good guest for you, because you're giving me a gift, bro. I'm so grateful for you allowing me to come on your show. So I want to do a great job. And you want that mindset when you're creating your content, but you have to have a show. You absolutely have to have a show. There aren't too many, because what ends up happening is this. It's a legitimately studied thing called pod fade. After 6 to 8 episodes, most people quit because they don't realize it's work. But if you can hang in there like you have, like I have, and get hundreds upon hundreds of episodes, Kelly, you are so much more credible than anybody else who's even close to doing what you do, because of you have social proof. And that's what podcasting is all about. You know, I actually do talk a little bit about it, because one of the other things I think is important about podcasting is you should have podcast heroes, interview heroes. You should have people that you say, I want to be like that. Because if you're a professional, and Kelly, you and I are professionals, and we've been doing lots of different things forever. When you first started cutting hair, you probably were like, dude, that's the best stylist I've ever seen in my life. Or, damn, I love that person. Look at that person's scissor work or their clipper work. And man, I want to do that. See, that is the difference between phoning it in and being a professional.
So who is like when you talk about that, as far as, podcasters, who is yours?
So,
who's your Mount Rushmore?
Yeah. So my Mount Rushmore is actually, they're not podcasters, but because I interview people. So my heroes, well, some of them have podcasts, but they're not known for their podcasts. They're known for their interviewing techniques. So the first one is actually Oprah Winfrey. And the reason why I idolize Oprah Winfrey is because she has this very specific superpower, which, by the way, if you go back and watch her early stuff when she was in Chicago, she had it then too. So when Oprah locks eyes with you, when you are in the presence of Oprah, the entire world falls away. So, and this happened. Whitney Houston's one of the greatest interviews she ever did on her show. And Whitney was interviewed after and said, man, Whitney, you shared stuff that you've never talked about on TV. And she's like, I forgot there was an audience. And so every time I go into a show, my goal is to focus so much on the person and make them feel like we're in this really wonderful protected bubble that the whole world falls away. Even if notifications go off, or, somebody comes to the door, or, their distractions aren't going to distract them because of the focus. So there's number one. Number two, using silence. One of the greatest interviews I've ever seen in my entire life was Phil Donahue interviewing the Minister Louis Farrakhan. It's a 2-part episode. If you haven't looked it up, look it up on YouTube. It's there. It's millions and millions of views. What Phil did was Phil gave you the space to truly complete a thought. And in fact, Saturday Night Live used to mock him for it all the time, because he'd hold his mic, a very specific microphone, when he was walking around the audience, and he'd go, and then he'd go, and then he'd like put his microphone down. And then, so the guest is on stage, Kelly, and they're like, I got to fill the time. And then they start talking more. And you know as well as I do, when you give somebody that space, the depth of the conversation continues to get deeper and deeper. So that's number two. I'll go through my other two real quick. Terry Gross. Terry Gross, who's done over 1,000 or 10,000 interviews for Fresh Air. She's just the greatest interviewer ever. And then the last one is one that's rather controversial, but I still think his approach was amazing, which was Larry King, because Larry King didn't prep. He was famous for not really researching his guests, because he wanted to go in and ask the questions that he knew his audience would want him to ask. So those are my that's my Mount Rushmore. Now from a today, there is very few podcasts I listen to, because most of them drive me crazy, because they do so many things wrong with technical stuff. And it's just like, come on, guys, like the information's free out there. Hell, I've broadcasted on it probably 20 times. Is a podcast called Ologies by Allie Ward. It's the #1 science podcast in the world. She's brilliant. Her show is perfect. Perfect. There isn't a show that is produced better than Allie Wordsologies.
Mm. Who do you want to interview?
Well, I wanted to interview Phil Donahue, and he just died like 3 weeks ago, dude.
Damn it, Phil. Hey, I was
know.
to make a Phil Donahue reference. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's another level of the game, Matt. Like, you took your cool to that level. Phil Donahue. Like, and for those you listening, you know, Phil Donahue is the man. He had that gray suit all the time.
Yeah.
He was constantly rocking the gray suit. Yeah. He was incredible. So, okay, so you wanted to interview Phil Donahue. Yeah. Who else would be on that Mount Rushmore of you interviewing?
Well, I would really love to interview Terry Gross about her interview techniques and her discipline, her preparation, how she prepares for a show, what she does when guests don't really follow the direction. And I want to know, because she's really brilliant at pivoting. God, she's so good at pivoting. She was interviewing Prince, and Prince was... he's like a little magical fairy, right? And so like he never really, he didn't stay where Terry wanted him to really stay a couple of times. But man, how she brought it back and brought him back in. Brilliant. So I would love to interview her. I'd really like to interview Trevor Noah and Simon Sinek. And I want to interview Trevor Noah because I think he's brilliant. But also because he's a student of this game. And Sinek, because he's a student of this game. And I want to hang out with other interviewers, people who focus at that level, and find out how they're doing what they're doing, to be brutally honest, so I can share it, because I don't like secrets like that.
What do you think the difference is between the people who are theorists about doing it and the people actually doing it? Because we live in a world of that, right? The person that says, I can't really do it myself, but I'm going to teach everyone how to do it. And then there's the person who does it that doesn't have the time to be able to sit and teach someone how to do it. What's your feel on those?
So I think one of the biggest fallacies in American sociological psyche is those who can do, those who can't teach. I hate that statement. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because, Kelly, you and I wouldn't be where we are if we didn't have our mentors and our teachers. Why are we diminishing the fact that they have the discipline and the patience to work with us? My goal, though, so if we're going to just talk about Matt here, my goal is to be both, right? So, and that's my mission, right? I'm just not the nerd who studied listening and wanted to help people listen better. I'm not just the nerd who totally nerds out on why a podcast is good, right? I'm the person who then takes what I've learned, tries to emulate that, but then also through the emulation, share those secrets. And so, dude, you do this. You do this all the time. You're not just teaching, you're showing, and you're doing. You're firing on all those cylinders too, which is why I love you and why I love consuming your content and texting you every once in a while just to tell you I love you. I'm thinking about you. When it was 4 years ago when we met. 4 years ago, right?
It's a long time, man.
This is the second time you and I have actually had this level of conversation, and I don't feel like any time has passed, because I love you and I support you, and I want you to achieve every single possible thing in your heart to be able to get in your life, to bless other people, to bless yourself, to bless your family, to do all of the things that you want. But so, and you do it too. And we know other people, dude. I know you know them. There are other people who are those people. And I just think we all need to hang out more.
Yeah. So tell me this, with over 1,000 podcasts, right? What do the people that know Matt, what do they not know about him? Like, I'll say, for instance, There's a thing that when I first got in my career years ago, when I first started in the professional beauty industry, I was really nervous and I didn't have any skill, but I could bowl really good. And so every time that a person came in, I got nervous. I would just think in my head, but I'll whoop your ass in bowling. You know what I mean? And so I gravitated towards that swag. And then my confidence, now, although my technique was awful, I would still give you an awful service, but my confidence level was like, boom, I would confident. So some people don't know that about me. I like dirty, nasty, old bowling alleys. There's one in Heber that I want to buy, and I want to buy this, and I want to own it, and I want to be the guy that can walk down the lanes, and my wife knows this as an entrepreneur. I want to own that business. Maybe that's something that you didn't know about me. After 1,000 episodes, over 1,000 episodes, what does the audience not know about Matt?
Well, a lot. And here's why. Kelly, I'm not on this side of the mic very often, dude. I'm always the one controlling the show, right? I'm going to digress very quickly. I was on another show recently, and it was a less experienced podcast host, not as good as you. And I'm about 7 minutes into the show, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I can just take over the show right now. Like I'm just, I'm going to start asking him questions. He's not even going to know what happened. But so anyway, so here's the thing. I don't share a lot about me. You have pulled more stuff out of me today in the time that we've been together, where the majority of people who have listened to my show for, we've done 500 episodes of one show. None of those people know much about me at all. But here's the crazy thing. When I go to conferences, I do a lot of conferences. You and I both speak often. People will come up to me and they will shake my hand or they'll give me a hug. And they're like, Matt, I feel like I know you so well because you have been with me on all of these drives or all of these runs for so many years. And it just makes me smile and it makes me very happy because they don't really know who I am. They know the Matt Halloran persona. They know that I love the Muppets and they know, I'm a nerd about podcasting, but I don't really share a whole bunch about myself because the show's not about me. The show's about you. And dude, you said that in the opening of the show. When you came on our show, that Be Your Own Law podcast, which by the way is still one of the most downloaded episodes ever for us.
Thank you.
I just wanted to get to know you. Now we have something, it's a very technical term called the sprinkle, which is where you do interject a little bit here and there to add context and, or maybe from a business perspective, driving people, hopefully to your lead magnet so that you can capture their information from the show. But man, dude, I wrote a book that my high school buddies didn't even know the stories in. So I don't know. Maybe I've got a problem with that, bro. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about that some more.
What else is where could you gravitate toward your swag? That thing that like I would challenge 97% of the listeners on this podcast to a match in bowling. I would challenge all of them, and I don't believe that I would lose. I believe I would show up with my Tennessee Titans roller bag with the 2 balls in it, one of which came from Kelly Kulick. Do you know who Kelly Kulick is?
No.
Kelly Kulick is the first woman to beat a man in the U.S. Open in bowling. Now, Kelly Kulick.
I saw the footage of that.
Kelly Kulick not only, and I want to have her on the podcast. I have her on my phone. I haven't called her in a long time. But Kelly Kulick beat him by 50 pins. Okay, Matt, here we go. So I'm sitting at the house, and I'm watching the playoffs. So Brett Favre is playing in the playoffs at the time. This is how long ago it was. He's playing in the playoffs. During halftime, I switch out because I don't want to watch the halftime because there's somebody doing a concert. So I switched, and on ESPN 4 was the Pro Bowlers tournament, and it was Kelly Kulick. She's rolling, and they said it happened to be in Vegas. I lived in Vegas. I called my buddy who ran the hotel where she was at, and I said, hey, I want to meet her. He said, well, why? And I said, well, I want to meet her, whatever. So I said, well, I'll have our staff do her hair. So I send a car.
Oh,
I send a car to pick her up literally right after the tournament. She just wins. They pick her up. We open up the salon just for her. We put Kingpin on the screen. When she walks in, it's only her. She privately gets her hair done. She gives me the ball that she won with, and then sends me her signature ball that I bowl with, the Kelly Kulick like signature ball, Ebonite. I believe it's Ebonite that did it. And so I would challenge anyone to a 3-game tournament at Surf Bowl in Oceanside. How about you, Matt?
dude, I don't think, I mean, mine's not that quantifiable. Mine's really not that measurable.
What are you going to get him in? Can you get him in pickleball? You got badminton game. You know what I'm saying? You got pool. Can you play pool? Can you play foosball?
No,
You play ping
no,
pong?
I don't do. So I think I would love to go toe to toe with anybody in an interview. I would love for you to find me the most difficult person that you could ever imagine to interview and put me in a room with 5 other professional journalists and interviewers. And I think I could go toe. I think I could find out something from that guest that nobody else could find out because of my process, my discipline, and because I want to be the best at this.
Wow.
Sorry, that's so nerdy compared to, sportsy stuff, but
No.
that's who I am, bro. I live for asking people questions. You asking me questions and me not asking you questions is really not my happy plot. I love this because I love you, dude. But there are 8 million things I want to ask you right now, man. 8 million. Like, you've said so many things today that make me want to know more about you. And that's just that curiosity that I have, it's that wanting to make people feel heard. That's what I want. That's my whole existence, man.
Tell me a nerding out thing about the podcast. Like the other day, I just upgraded from the Rodecaster to the Rodecaster 2, right?
Oh.
Rodecaster Pro 2. So I just upgraded that. And I, just did the second part of the studio. So you saw that when we were doing the interview or the intro. I did that. I nerd out on those things. Like I go home to my wife and I'm like, I just got the curtain set up and it just looks power. And my wife was like, yeah, whatever. Did you take the trash out? Matt, tell me some nerding out, like things that only podcasters would be like, or interviewers would be like, holy, that's the grail.
Well, so I think the biggest issue that everybody has that is not talked about enough is mic usage, right? And so first up, most people buy the wrong mic. They buy that Yeti mic, which is it's really actually a huge piece of crap, right? There's so many.
We just lost our sponsorship. Yeti, I want to tell you, it's been good knowing you. Shure and Pod Mic, we're here for you. I just want to tell you.
So let's talk about that, right? So I've got the Shure SM7B here. My Rode mic is actually a 58, which is the same microphone that like Roger Daltrey used in The Who and would swing around his head and it hit the ground and you pick it back up and it'd still sound great. It's just they're great microphones, but mic usage is the big thing, right? I was just a friend of mine has a show and he was interviewing this really high-powered financial analyst, and he was so horribly overmodulated because he didn't understand the pattern that the microphone picks your voice up. So once you know that you've got a cardioid pattern, right, which is a little heart pattern that comes from here up to here. So this is the sweet spot of the microphone. But when you know that, then you also need to start paying attention to your plosives, your P's, your T's, your S's. We all have them. Now, if you see how my mic is positioned, it's because my S's are very hissy. And if I use S's into the microphone, sounds very different than if I use the S's across the plane, right? So these are like, nobody tells anybody this stuff and it drives me crazy because they're either eating the microphone or they're way too far away from their microphone. They don't realize that you have to. My favorite thing in the world, just to illustrate this, is I just saw Wicked, dude. And so I'm a huge Ariana Grande fan anyway. But I remember her and Christina Aguilera, when they would start singing and then they were getting ready to belt. Do you remember what they do? They pull their mic away and then they hit it back again. Mic away. When they're like, hitting that note. That's what you have to understand. Kelly, when you go back and watch this, if you do, you're going to see that there are times that I backed away from the microphone, times I got close to the microphone, because I know that I have a big volume swing, that I want to blow your guests out with my voice. But that's the level of nerdiness, dude. I've studied the patterns of the microphones. I've studied ways to train yourself to not have hard P's, T's, and S's. Yeah, I just love this stuff too much. And dude, here's the deal. My wife, she was like, "Hey, I'd like to do a podcast." I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Oh no, I think I just did something wrong." And so anyway.
What about the nerding out on the interview part of it? You talked about like the Phil Donahue, the pause. Someone asked me that the other day. I just did a keynote in Fresno, and the pause for me was always scary early on in my speaking career. So, 30 years ago when I started, I remember they recorded it, which sucked. That they recorded it because I got to watch it. And first of all, I sounded like a 13-year-old girl. And second, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. And third, my cadence was racing Carl Lewis in the Olympics. And in Fresno, one of the things that the guy talked about was the pause. Talk to us a little bit more of the nerding out part of the interview part that you've seen. You told us about the Larry King with the curiosity. The pause with Phil Donahue. I love that you said Phil Donahue too. We have to mention Chuck Woolery in this too, somehow.
Well, yeah, we could go down a Chuck Woolery. I mean, really, if you really want to study somebody who was able to really manage total insanity at times on his show and how he was able to get control again with masterful technique. All right, pause. Here we go. You have to get uncomfortable. You have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable silence. In radio, dead air was, you were in a lot of trouble, right? Podcasting is very different. I absolutely love not saying anything because I don't want to direct the conversation. I want to allow the conversation to happen. And one of the best things that you can do is, so there's something I talk about, it's called the dramatic pause, otherwise known as a pregnant pause or the 5-second rule. And when you get done talking, when the person you're interviewing gets done talking, what you want to do is you want to take a deep breath, not like because you don't want to freak your audience out. A nice gentle breath through your nose and out your mouth. And while you're doing that, you're going to count. Okay. And at first 2 seconds is going to feel like 2 years, 3 seconds is going to feel longer, but then you start getting comfortable with that uncomfortableness, because I'm not trying to make the guest purposely uncomfortable. I'm trying to make them want to fill the space. And that's in any conversation. When you're talking with your significant other, when you're talking to your kids, do this with your kids. Don't do what most parents do, which is all the time. Ask them a question, shut up. When they get done answering your question, don't say anything. Look at them, smile, just sit there. And that what they're going to do is what we're all naturally inclined to do, which is they're going to continue to talk. And if you can do that twice, Kelly, in a conversation, where they're going to go is where they need to go to tell you what they need to talk to you about. But so many of us are so fiercely trying to control everything around us that they're going to say things like, well, I want you to tell me more about this specific situation. Instead, say, hey, could you tell me more about that? All of a sudden, I'm not telling you what that is. You're making the decision what that is. And all of a sudden they start chasing these things. And that's why you had a good experience on our show. I wanted Kelly to be Kelly. That's what I wanted. That's all I wanted. I wanted you to shine as bright as you possibly could and share the wisdom that I knew you had inside of you. And the only way you can do that is by giving up control and allowing the person, your guest, to follow their path. And if you set it up correctly, which is, hey, look, I want you to talk in no more than 3-minute segments. All of the sudden, how quickly they get to the point by setting expectations, you can get really deep. And in fact, if you play this back, you will notice that I rarely talk for more than 3 minutes. Might seem like I'm talking for longer, but it's about 3-minute chunks.
What can you compare podcasting to, or is there a comparison?
Dude, okay, so man, you're really letting me nerd out here, and I really appreciate it, bro. So when in your life will somebody allow you into their quiet time without being creepy? When do people listen to podcasts, Kelly? Exercising, driving to work, preparing dinner, going for a walk, walking the dog. They're giving you their quiet time. They're giving you one-on-one time where you get to be in their ear, dude. So that's why these people who half-ass their shows, who have terrible audio quality, who don't plan for their show, who don't get warmed up for their show, who don't have a format for their show, they're just blowing it, man. Especially, let's just go pure business here.
Yeah.
How else are you going to get into the person's quiet time? An ad? I skip by those. They drive me nuts. TV, YouTube videos? Yeah, still. But it's the content that is actually king. It's not the ad insertion that's king. So there is no other medium. And the other really cool thing is like when you're driving or where you're walking, there's a level of brain occupation where the assimilation of the information that you're giving them through this, auditory medium works incredibly well. And I'll leave you with that statement is this. We've been telling stories, dude, around a campfire since we said ugh, right? So this is what we're hardwired to want. We want the stories. We want the connection. We want somebody there. And podcasting is the best way to do that.
What's the story that you've never told anyone?
There's so many of them, dude.
What's the most embarrassing one that you hadn't told anybody?
Oh, see, that's the problem though, is I love sharing the embarrassing stories
Okay.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit, but I'm going to tell you one that is incredibly embarrassing. Okay. As evidenced by earlier, I talked about, I love superheroes, and you can probably see that from the stuff that I have around me here in the screenshot here. So we're watching Thor, right? The second Thor movie the first Thor movie with my kids. And so, we're about halfway through the movie, and it's my wife. We rented it. We were at home, or it was on Netflix or whatever. And we're all sitting on the couch together. And I turned to my wife and I said, why is he called the God of thunder? Shouldn't he be called the God of lightning? And my wife just like an audible gasp. Audible gasp. Now, Kelly, when I was growing up, I was raised in an incredibly religious household, okay, where most things were ascribed to God. Why are there rainbows? It wasn't because of prismatic light. It was because that was the promise that God said he'd never flood the earth again, right? When beams of light would come through the clouds, it wasn't because of light separation or whatever from the clouds. That was God touching the earth. That was my life, right? And I never really studied science. I told you I was a philosophy major, dude, in college, right? And my wife is a science teacher, and she looks at me and she goes, "Well, where do you think thunder comes from?" And so I answered the question. I thought thunder came from two rain-laden clouds crashing together. That's what I thought. My kids, which they were probably 7 or 8 years old at the time, started laughing, just like rolling over and laughing. And my wife was like, "Oh my God, are you serious?" And then this is why I love this woman so much. Then she realized I was being very serious, and she went into teacher mode. And she had explained to me, about, the fact that it's actually, when the lightning goes off, it is the delay and the sound and blah, 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 and all of that stuff. Listen, man, on the grand scheme of things, I don't know crap about anything. What I know about is one molecule of water in an ocean. And I am so grateful that I approach life that way, because it allows me to have the curiosity that I think a lot of other people don't have. I think everybody thinks they know what's going on. No, you don't. All of us are just making this shit up as we go along, dude. Most of us have no idea what's going on. We might think we do, but on the grand scheme of things, you don't. And when you can give up that level of control and understanding, everything in the world becomes clear.
How do you continue to have that mentality? Because it's very popular for a person to say, Disney does this, Apple does this, Joe Rogan does this, therefore you should do this. Although Apple and Disney and Rogan will give away every single thing that they do, because they know they're just on to the next thing, trying something out. If it works, they write it down, systemize it, and keep doing it, which they keep making mistakes. How do you stay in that, as opposed to, because it's almost a fork in the road, right? That fork in the road where we just begin to, we follow what has been, as opposed to just staying curious on what could be.
I honestly think I'm wired wrong. Because I seek change. So everybody's got routines, right? So for instance, I get up in the morning, and, I'm older, so, I have to use the bathroom 50 times in the middle of the night. And then I get up in the morning, and the first thing that I do is, I push the button if I'm up earlier than the coffee maker goes off, right? And so, most people, when they're making their coffee, they have a very specific sequence of do this, then this, then this. I purposefully will change that every day. So sometimes I'll put the sugar in first, and then sometimes I put something else in first, and then the other time I'll put this in, and sometimes I don't do any of those things, and I just try coffee black, which I don't know who the hell can drink black coffee. It's not my thing. But when I'm driving places, this is so funny. So we'll be going somewhere. My wife and I will be going out on a date or whatever, and we've chosen a restaurant, and sometimes I drive, sometimes she drives. It's really neither here nor there. But we'll pull out of the driveway, and we'll be going down the road, and I'll actually have to push navigation. I've been to the place 100 times, because I never go the same way to the same restaurant. Because listen, there could be something, and this drives my wife crazy sometimes. There could be something if I turned here, and my wife is all about efficiency. So I think I'm just wired wrong, dude. I always want to find something new. I always want to change. There's a wonderful video of this rabbi who's talking about lobsters and how much discomfort a lobster has to experience before it breaks out to be able to have the new shell. And I love that feeling, dude. I always want to be in that level of pressure and discomfort and change, and just because I don't know what's next, man. So many people think that they know what's next. I have goals. I have a plan, but dude, when I was in the Navy, we were in a nor'eastern, which is a really bad storm. We had 20-foot swells. Everybody on the ship was getting sick. Like it was disgusting. We were hosing down the interior part of the ship because everybody's getting sick. And I didn't get seasick at the time. I don't know why. Again, I'm wired wrong. And so as I was walking up to the front of the ship, man, it's like pelting rain, and I'm hooked into this line, and I'm moving like this, and then I get up to the front of the ship, and I'd come back, and then the wind was at my back, and I could like jump, and I'd be flying through the air and having a great time, right? That became a metaphor of my entire life. Listen, dude, I trust the wind. I trust the wind. I've always tried to find a way to put the wind at my back. You can call the wind God, Allah, Buddha. I don't care what you call it. It's the wind, bro. I'm going to trust the wind, because if the wind starts blowing me in a direction I'm not entirely comfortable with, I can make adjustments. But the wind's blowing me in that direction for a reason. I'm just going to trust the wind.
If you got to interview the wind, what would be your first question?
What do you do now? How does it make you feel when people don't trust you?
How would you end the interview? Like, how would you, like, given that uppercut, that knockout punch, the wind, what would you ask?
My favorite question in any interview that I ever do, I use a Columbo trick. So I started winding the show down. Explain
who Columbo is, because we got 22-year-old listeners. Matt, and this is a crazy thing, Matt, is people told me, they said, you have to find a niche, you have to stay in the niche. And I said, my niche is people. And they were like, that doesn't work. And they said, well, if you're speaking to everyone, you're not speaking to anybody. But our demographic from 17 to 60 is 25, 25, 25, 25. Like, or it's all 25s, like across the board.
So Columbo was actually really early on. I was really, really young, but he was a detective, and he was the greatest detective in the entire world. And he was this kind of wrinkly, surly, tobacco smelling, coffee smelling guy. His clothes were always crumpled up. And what he would do is he would get done interviewing somebody, and he'd turn around, he'd be like, hey, thank you very much. I really hope you have a good day. I hope I don't ever have to see you again. And so what would happen is the perp, or the person that they were, being questioned, their guard would come down, and then Columbo would turn around and say, oh, I have one more question. And they would spill the beans, right? Because their guard went down. We know this is the case. This isn't just great TV. And so what I do on the end of my show, and I would do this with the wind, is I would start winding the show down so that the wind knew that the show was coming to an end. And part of that is I say, hey, wind, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, where should they go? Who should get in touch with you? What would you like for them to do? And they get done, go to my website, thewind.com or whatever. And then I'll say, hey, I have one other quick question. What question should I have asked you that I didn't? That's what I'd ask the wind.
I ask that to everybody. One of my favorite episodes of Columbo. I don't know if you're a huge Columbo historian. You know that there's a new show called Columbo, and it's with a woman now. It's with Kate, whatever her name is, that beat the guy. What was that? Misery. What's her name? What's her name?
Kathy Bates.
Got it. Okay, so I called her Kate, but that's because we're close. That's why. So I call her Katie. But there was an episode of Columbo where every one of them, you kind of know who did it, and you know that they're going to get caught. But there was this one where I was like, this was the best episode of all time, where this lady had killed her husband, and they had but she had an alibi. And I don't know if you remember this. She had an alibi. She's leaving the house, and they have an alibi because they have the video of her leaving the house before the murder happened. So there's no way she could do the. And I'm thinking, is this the end? Like, is this the end of Columbo because he's not going to solve the crime? And at the very end of the show, he says I got one more question. And he shows the picture. Or actually the lady who had the alibi, she shows the picture. She says, well, obviously I couldn't have because you see the timestamp on it. And he looked at it and he said, thank you so much. And she showed the picture and he looked and there was not a shadow under her nose.
Oh.
And he said, what time was it when you left? And she said the time. And he said, the sun was shining at this angle and there would have been a shadow under your nose.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, what is that shadow under the nose that you found in podcasting that has blown your mind?
Dude, honestly, it is trusting in my guests. I don't care if you've done, how many podcasts had you been on before you came on our show?
Maybe 5, 10, maybe.
I didn't know that. I Larry King'd that part of my preparation. You were referred to me by somebody who I like and trust very, very much. I kind of checked you out. It's like, wow. Okay. Salon owner, Paul Mitchell, freaking cool looking dude. I knew that you did a lot of stuff spiritually. But I think that trusting your guest and really letting it be about them, I think that is the sun. I think that's where you need to shine. The light always needs to be on your guest. And that is nobody's prepared for that because most people who have their own shows make the show about themselves. You don't, which I'm very grateful for. But a lot of people do. So I think that would be my Columbo tip there.
Who do you want to do your eulogy?
Oh.
Can I tell you who I want to do mine?
Yeah.
I want Maxwell to start it off. I want him to sing. Don't Ever Wonder.
Wow.
So that's the first one that I want him to go to. I want D'Angelo. I don't want cracked out D'Angelo that in the mugshot. I want the other D'Angelo of Brown Sugar. You know what I'm saying? Like the ladies, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I want him on a piano, smoke-filled jazz club, playing the piano, hitting some songs from from Brown Sugar. And the one that I got to share with my mom. Are you a D'Angelo fan at all?
I mean, I'm familiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a song called S Damn MFer, but it's spelled out, and he sings that, and he is so smooth that he said that verse, and I showed it to my mom when I was like 20 years old, and my mom, poop was a bad word. And she was nodding her head. And I was like, Mom, you know what he's saying right now. She's not like, no, so I would have those two go to kind of warm it up. I want De La Soul to bring it home.
Wow.
And then I would like to have my brother and my kids and my wife, but that's how I want it to go. If Chuck Woolery was alive, then I would want him to end it with, and we'll be back in 2 and 2. Where would you go? What would be your lineup?
I would love, with this phase of my life being so aggressively optimistic and trying to share and spread love into the world. I would love to have Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine say in my eulogy that I was a militant person of love. Um, that'd be cool. Like Black Thought from the Roots, man, if he could do a poem or a freestyle inspired by the people I had the chance to touch. I'd probably want Chuck D just because he's got the greatest voice out of any rapper ever. Um, and then I would want, I mean, honestly, dude, when you started that off, I didn't know where you were going to go with that. And so I'm thinking, well, geez, man, I just hope my kids love me enough that they want to do my eulogy, man. So that's where I didn't really think about famous people, but yeah, I mean, that's really, I really hope that I have made such an impact in my family's life that they would that they'd be jostling for position on who could do that.
Yeah. What would be the kind of pinnacle for you? I mean, I know too, like you're a guy which I love, that it's not, I love that you're not a fame chaser. And I've watched this. I've got to watch it over the last 4 years. You're not a fame chaser. You're not the guy who's you're always wanting to make sure that people feel amazing. Like when I left the podcast with you, it was like I was walking on clouds. You know what I mean? And little did you know that really I was in a massive transition in my life. But you made me feel like I could do it. You know what I mean? And I think that part is so meaningful in what it is. Help me with this. What would be a pinnacle moment for you? Whether that be, I know the TEDx thing that's coming, which is going to be amazing. Congratulations on that. But now it's a reality. So it's like, you're going to high five it, Matt. Literally, I saw you were like a 2-year-old that just got a popsicle before we started recording.
Yeah,
and you were like, I'm getting a TEDx. It's the biggest audience and I'm doing it. It is so amazing. But now it's like, high five, bro. What would be another pinnacle thing for you? And it doesn't have to be just, industry wise, it could just be just because you want to. I mean, I want to own a bowling alley, like a dirty old bowl, and I'm not going to renovate it. I'm just going to make it real cool.
Yeah. So what an interesting question and such interesting timing. One of the unintended consequences of the book has been massive talks about modern masculinity and how I feel about masculinity. And that has made me chase some pretty aggressive rabbits. And if I had all of the money that I ever needed or I could do anything with, I would want to create something for young men from 18 to 22, 23 years old. That would be an experience-based chance for their brain to finish baking in a safe environment that would allow them to truly come into their own. We know that men's brains aren't fully baked until 24 to 26, but we're still asking them to behave in manners so societally that in the past, Kelly, they were removed from the village from those ages to go sow their wild whatever and go kill things and beat up on trees and run around and do all of these things. That's what I would do, man. I would try to find a way to truly help boys step into their manhood in a safe, productive, positive environment so that they could get what I got, having to go through a war and a couple of pretty powerful near-death experiences without all of that crap. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. What would it look like? I mean, does that look like a Woodstock? Like as I'm like my head, I've never been diagnosed with anything, but I feel I have a lot of things.
You and me both, brother, on that one. So.
I once said that, I must have ADD, ADHD because I worked at KFC. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all in there. So as I'm thinking, and I'm hearing you talk about it, and I'm painting a picture. I'm like Woodstock, like Woodstock, right? Is that the manner? That you have some music involved, you have some comedy involved, or is it more of a, I just watched the documentary with Aaron Rodgers. So is it more of a getaway ayahuasca, get in touch with yourself, or is it the jump off of cliffs and, like you're saying, chop trees, do man things? What does it look like?
It'd be every aspect of that. And I think that's what we're really, really missing. We're trying to just cram boys through a process that isn't beneficial for them to figure out who the hell they are. I'd want there to be comedy. I'd want there to be music that they could make themselves, or just to be around, all kinds of music. I want them to jump off a damn cliff, right? I want them to climb the trees. If they want to do ayahuasca, if they want to do mushrooms, I'd want to create a very safe space for them to do that. Because the people who do that stuff, they come back and they're changed, and they say, I don't know if you know this, but I just talked to God for 4 hours and I've changed some things, right? But I would want to make it so the idea is safety, right? So that, Kelly, and I know I'm well older than you are.
You ain't that much older than me, man.
I know. I just look way freaking older than you do. And so, when I was a kid, do you remember when we had to be home?
Yeah, the lights turn on, man.
When the lights turned on. My mom had no idea what the hell I was doing. Right now, my mom also worked a whole bunch and all of that stuff. But dude, that was so. We don't. That's not the case anymore, right? And I'm not saying kids shouldn't wear helmets. I'm not saying that stuff. Right. I'm not saying that we shouldn't check in way more than I was checked in on. Right. Because listen, I did really stupid stuff that I'm really surprised I'm still alive. But being able to give them an environment that they could go ahead and explore those things is just, they want to shoot guns. They want to paint pictures. They want to dig holes. I don't care what it is, man, but just give them the space and the freedom to do that. I think we could start really allowing men to really understand what it actually means to be a man, and not following the Andrew Tates of the world who are just poisoning an entire generation of men, telling them horrible things that are wrong, that aren't going to benefit them because it gets them clicks.
What is the importance of dads in all of this? Like if you had a room full of dads, if we could get a room of all the dads or potential dads, that would be a lot of people. If you had the room and you had, maybe a couple minutes to be able to talk to them, what would you say to them?
Be present. That's it. There's nothing more important. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter anything else. You have to be present. And I'm not talking about present on your phone. I'm talking about being present. So as my partner and I have built a very, very successful podcasting company, where as of this date, we've done 8,500 episodes and over 150,000 social media posts. For one industry specifically, which is financial services, which we're expanding that as of right now, but that's where we've cut our teeth. I'm busy, right? I didn't miss my kids' swim meets. I went to every play, every orchestra concert, sometimes more than once. And I was there, fully there, phone off, paying attention. That's what your kids want, man. Especially from dads. Yeah. Do they want roughhousing, and do they want to play sports, and do they want to get some sage advice? Yeah. But ask your kids. This is like, man, this was eye opening for me. Ask your kids, what is their favorite memory of you? And shut up. It's probably not what you think it is.
Matt, I could see it in you, right? I could see it in you when you talked about earlier. You were like, you're so, you know, not uncomfortable, but you said you don't, you generally you're not on this side of the mic very often. You know, what questions do you have
for you, dude? Like, I don't even know where to begin. What, are you kidding me? First off, what the hell's up with bowling, dude? Like, what? Bowling? What? Where? Why? What is it about bowling that interests you at all? That eludes me beyond all recognition. I want to know how you find the strength to produce the level of content that you produce. I want to know how, through all of the stuff you've been through, because brother, I know you've been through a lot of stuff, how you have given yourself permission to have the strength to truly be the Kelly we all know today. And I have a million questions for you, dude, but there's some.
The bowling one is because it's the last frontier. You don't have to be cool. You don't have to be in shape. You don't have to even be in your right mind, because most of the time, the drunker you are, the better you are at bowling. It's not cool. Like, it hasn't been overtaken and hijacked by I'm really cool, I've got a cool outfit. It's like dirty, grimy, in the dirt. Like, that's what it is. It's pure, and I love it. And I don't want to go to your glowing, rock and roll bowling. I want dirty, nasty. I want at least one tooth missing from the dude who's going to spray my shoes with some nasty fungus inside of it. But I got my own shoes. I got my own ball, so I'm good. But that's the reason why I love it. It is, I tell you, that sport is unbelievable. And here's the breakdown of it. In the event that you are 1 millimeter off in your release, your focus, your step, it changes the whole game, and it humbles your butt. And I think of it like business, right? I think of it like business or just trying. And it rolls into the content, right? So from the content piece, I had a guy named Cody Cottle. I was on his podcast. He asked me a routine, because he's a routine guy. He's like a cold plunge, hot plunge, you know the guy, right? He's like, rah, 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 and he's like, what's your routine? And I was like, I don't know. Sometimes it's running. Sometimes it's riding a bike. Sometimes it's sleeping in, because I think that's better for my body. Although I'm just,
I know.
You know. And I said that I do the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. And that was January 6th last year, or January 5th that I did the podcast. And when we got done, he said, why don't you do a podcast on that? So the next day I woke up, and because I study the proverb and I write about it every day, I was like, well, there's an episode. So I did it, and I was like, and I committed to it, and I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd leave my wife at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would go do the episode, and then I'd be back to the house by the time that the kids got up. And I just did this over and over again. And so from January 6th to this January 6th, we did 275 episodes. But I tell you, this is the part that most people don't know, is when I started to do those, the listenership of the show, Matt, dropped off tremendously.
Oh.
It didn't elevate. And so I asked God, I was like, do you want me to stop this? And he said, no, you're not doing this for an audience. You're doing it to be obedient to me. And like a bonehead, I've continued to ask him over and over again, are you sure?
Yeah. Got to trust the wind, bro.
Isn't it wild? Like, I hope that people, when they watch, if you watch this part of the podcast and then you rewind, I would do it backwards. Watch this right now. So I'll have this clip. Watch that, what Matt just did, what he just did. And I knew it was coming. But I still feel in my heart, I'm like, damn, Matt, like, I feel good. But I invite you, watch that part, then rewind and see that he told you he was going to do it. Then he explained it. Now watch this. Number 1, you're not listening. Number 2, the 5 steps of communicators, or the 5 types. The listen to learn, holding space, listening to listen, listening to build trust, listening to persuade, listening to amplify others, and listening to engage. And you did all of them right there.
I want people to do this, dude. We live in a world where there is an pandemic, an epidemic of loneliness, where people are just screaming into the void, hoping that somebody will show that they're listening. I'm not saying agreeing with you. I'm saying just showing that you're listening. But I found very few people are teaching people practical ways to practice the skill of listening. Everybody focuses on active listening, which is great. But active listening is about me. Engaged listening, which is what I teach, is about you. And when you make it about you, we can change the world, man. I hope somebody somewhere, because I believe in the butterfly effect, the more people that can start doing this stuff, we can start counteracting all of the hate, all of the intolerance, all of the belligerentness. I don't even think that's a word. Belligerency. I don't know what the hell the word is, dude. Stupid people do.
We're gonna put it in the Urban Dictionary. What did you say? What was it? Belligerency?
That's the word I want to stick to.
Okay. What did you say though? Belligerentness?
Belligerentness. Yeah.
Did you say belligerent? I think that's a word.
Okay.
Should I fact check that?
I mean, you can. I mean, we have literally a computer at our hands.
Belligerentness. You said.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me look at this. I want to see if that actually. I wish that I had talk to type on my computer. Good
luck spelling that, dude.
Belligerentness, did we say?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Google search. Nope. It's not there.
I think it's just being belligerent, I think is the way that I should have probably said it. Listen, I make up words all the time. It's part of my way my brain works, kind of.
I love it.
Yeah. Belligerentology. Anyway, so the idea that by being quiet, that simple act of silence, holding space, can just, because it's not emulated anywhere, Kelly. Content creators, podcasters, politicians, business owners, famous people, man, all they're doing is they're just spewing things, and everybody's just like, they're not trying to listen critically. They're not looking at the different types of communicators and say, man, that person, they're just a hang glider. Then that's all they're ever doing. There's no depth to anything that they're saying. All they're doing is they're circling around and, man, it's so pretty up here. Yeah, I'm so smart. Yeah, dude. But when you recognize, dude, that's a hang glider, I'm not going to hold them in the same level of regard as somebody who does know how to snorkel. And snorkeling is my favorite one out of all of those, because I think snorkeling is something you can attain because, and we've experienced this repeatedly through the podcast. So snorkeling, you're looking down at the depths of conversation in the world, and you take a breath and then you dive deep. Depending on how long you can hold your breath, 1 minute, 3 minutes, you come back up. Come up for air. That is actually, that's why I taught you and I teach other people in the world of podcasting, try to keep your talking points to anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes. By the way, if you ever do public relations, that's what they want too, just so you know. But 1 to 3 minutes. That gives me the chance to breathe. That gives you the chance to breathe. And then all of a sudden, this becomes a very, very different conversation. So the question that I want to ask you is my one question, which is when you're on podcasts, what is the question that you've always wanted a podcaster or an interviewer to ask you that they either haven't had the courage, the foresight, or the fortitude to ask you?
I think that I'd want them to ask a question based off of what they listened to as opposed to what they wrote down before they started the show. And that could be in anything. Like when you were talking about the bowling part, it stuck out to you, right? And so you wanted to ask about it. And I don't know. I don't know if I've ever told you, but for me, I research, I prep, but I never send any questions. I never write any questions down. The reason, there's a couple different reasons, and they're just silly and they're just for me. Number one, this isn't a good topic right now, especially where he's at and what he's dealing with. But Jay-Z, when I say that word, then, you know, I mean, it used to be a good reference. You know what I mean? It used to be cool to be able to be like, yo, you're the P. Diddy of whatever, but you don't want to be the P. Diddy of nothing right now. Nah. But Jay-Z, it hit me because when he would write a song, he would go in the studio and he never wrote it down. He would always just go off the top. And the same thing with Lil Wayne. This is what they at least say. And so I was like, oh, I love hip hop. I love the art of things, and I love the fact, the wordplay, and how to be able to get through something. And I just find, for me, and it goes back to that, and I'm probably right at 2.5, maybe 3 minutes on this answer. But it honestly, Matt, it would be like, I would want them to ask about something that they actually heard, because very, very few people I ever feel in my life, but you're one of them, like that you actually want to know the answer to what you're asking.
Intention goes really far with listening, because if you don't actually want to hear the answer, it's apparent you really don't. You're just waiting to talk again, dude. And that's normal, right? And I'm going against that. I want, Kelly, I do. So we're at a grocery store just up the street here. And they didn't have a lot of groceries. And I get up to the cashier, and you know this, something's off, something's wrong. And I said, hey, can you hold on a second? What? I said, hold on a second. She's like, what? I need to scan these. I said, look, there's nobody behind us. Just trust me. She was like, okay, this is going to get weird. And I was like, you okay? Oh, my wife, my wife goes, we get in the car and she's like, damn it, I knew what you were doing. And you said, hey, honey, do you want to take the keys and warm the car up? And I was like, no, I'll just stay here. And then, because you knew you were going to ask her this, and you were giving me the out, and I didn't take it. And she said, what do you mean, the young lady? And I said, I just want you to know that I care. And I hope you're going to be okay. And she was just like, how did you know I needed that? And here's the crazy thing, Kelly. Everybody freaking needs that.
Mm.
Everybody needs that. So many of us are so consumed by ourselves. And everybody else is so much more interesting.
How do you go from, and you do it masterfully, because it's a part of you. Like if a person goes back and they listen to our conversation, then they're going to hear about a guy who doesn't just, now, obviously you wrote a book about it, but you live it. It's a part of you. It's what you do. Like you've done it this whole entire time. How does a person, this is a trick, and I don't know if it's a trick, but how does a person go from it being a hack or a technique into just something that they live?
Nobody's going to like this answer, dude, because you got to practice. So let's go back to Jay-Z and Lil Wayne. Let's go to, if you've ever had the chance to hear Black Thought freestyle on Sway in the Morning, which is one of the greatest pieces of art I've ever experienced in my life. Jay-Z's able to do that. Lil Wayne's able to do that because they put in the reps ahead of time. Okay. This is not something, as a person who my grandmother told me, Kelly, to shut up because I talked too much. This was not part of how I am fundamentally wired. I practice this. I practice it every day. It's, people always talk about, basketball players and, why are they dribbling the ball before the game, and why are they taking these shots? And they've done this hundreds of thousands of times, literally thousands of times. It's because they're warming up, right? And they're always wanting to keep that mind fresh, that muscle memory there. And listening is no different. Learning these skills that I teach on social media, in the book, are things that you have to practice. And that's why, Kelly, I give actual exercises at the end of every chapter where you can go out and practice one of these techniques and start seeing immediate results. If you do the exercises in the way that I outline in the book, you're gonna, oh my God, damn, dude, Matt's not kidding. This is freaking powerful. And you're gonna want to do it more. And then you just start craving this unbelievably rewarding experience of learning how to shut the F up and listen.
What about, say with your wife, because your wife knows this, she's lived it, she understands the book, she's been with you. Does she call you when she's like, dude, okay, you're trying to listen, bro. Like I see it. You know what I mean? Because I say this because I have a wife that honestly, she's told me in the past, like, don't technique me, bro. Like don't try that stuff on me. Because I'll try the compliment sandwich, which is we all love to eat, right? Hey, you're doing amazing. You're a great person. By the way, can you clean up the trash? And I just wanted you to know that you're a great, you always wear great shoes. And then you deliver the compliment sandwich. They walk off, and you know what? That's leadership 101. And my wife is like, don't give me the sandwich, man. Like I am going vegan. I'm going, keto today. I don't need the bread. Just give me the meat. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, I love that, dude. That's fantastic. So that hits really close to home too. So I'm right there with you. One of the things that my wife will say to me is, I don't need Coach Matt right now. I need husband Matt. And so part of it is, and actually this might surprise you maybe a little bit. Nobody doesn't want to be listened to, dude. So, my wife and I will be, I have 2 dogs, and so we take them to the park all the time, and we'll be walking around in the woods there.
Do you like one of them more?
Oh yeah.
Which one?
So I like Luke more. Luke is our older dog. His big brother was my favorite dog I've ever had. His name was Sid. He was our St. Bernard. And then we got a COVID dog, because
That's a type of dog.
yeah, yeah. Well, so he was supposed to be a Saint Bernard Husky mix.
Okay.
So because I wanted another Saint Bernard, and he is a Beagle Coonhound mix. Way too freaking smart, bro. Like this dog, like you know how you can buy puzzles for dogs?
Yeah.
So I bought him a level 5 puzzle, which is supposed to take him 3 hours to solve the puzzle. 15 minutes. I was like, oh, I just pissed away $75 on a puzzle. I thought I was going to, keep him occupied for forever. But I mean, I love him too, but boy, he's a lot to deal with.
Okay.
And because my wife had retired right around the COVID time, it's her dog. And so Luke is still kind of both of our dogs, where Obi is, man, my wife is his mom, and that's all he knows. But we're walking around, and I'll just listen and listen and listen. And every once in a while she'll stop and she'll turn to me and she'll say, do you have anything to add? Oh, sure. Yeah, I've got just, not to be just you're just going, right? And I love the journey that we're on together with whatever you're talking about. But what I have found is men don't like this. Most men hate when I'm doing any of the skills in the book, which is very difficult, which, to be really transparent, I don't hang out with a lot of manly men. I don't like it. I don't need to go through all that testosterone crap. I just don't care. I don't need it. I think it's inefficient. I think it's ridiculous. But the crazy thing is once they get past the man brain aspect of it and they realize that somebody's actually who gives a crap about them is listening, your relationship totally changes. But women, when they're growing up and they're hanging out with their girlfriends at slumber parties, they're just talking to each other. They're not trying to solve their problems. One of my favorite things that I learned early on in this listening journey was asking the question, do you want me to just listen to what you're saying, or are you asking me to help you solve the problem? And that changed my marriage. Because, Kelly, I'm a problem solver, dude. I'm good at it. That doesn't mean she wants me to solve the problem. So, yeah.
With you and your wife, when's the last time that you guys belly laughed?
Oh God. So TikTok is our love language now, bro. So
it's very educational.
Oh my God.
It brings families together.
You know what? Honestly, I look forward every day for my wife to share the TikToks that she curated in her liked folder every day, and that we just laugh hysterically. So we just ended up watching the Nate Bargatze Netflix special, which was we both just laughed from beginning to end. That guy's timing is unbelievable, dude. Do you know who he is?
Yeah.
Okay. So he just has a new Netflix special.
Yeah.
And one of the things, his superpower is the space between the jokes. Go back and watch how long he waits to let his stuff sit and how comfortable he's in with that silence. It's freaking masterful. It's masterful. And I made my wife pause it. Actually, we were about halfway through the whatever it was, 60 minutes or whatever. And I was like, oh, you got to pause this. And she goes, is this about the time between his jokes? I was like, did you see what he's doing? And she's like, yeah, I totally see what he's doing. And that's one of the reasons he's so funny is his timing is just so, you got other people who are like, bam, 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 bam. But man, he's not like that. He'll say something and it takes you a second. And you're like, oh, that was great. And he gives you the chance to laugh, dude. I love when people do that. And that's actually, I mean, I'm trying to do the same thing in my interviews. I'm trying to give you that space to laugh, to experience what just happened before we move on to something else.
What do you wish that I would ask you today?
You know, what seems to be very common on the shows that I'm on, kind of talking a little bit about the book, is talking about one of those exercises. So, you know, for your audience to leave the show with something that they can go do today that will allow them to start understanding the power of listening.
What would that be?
So it's my favorite exercise in the whole book, dude. So you're going to go out with your significant other or your best friend, and you're going to go into an environment that has many, many people. So restaurant, coffee shop, cafe, anywhere where people are sitting and talking. And you're going to sit next to each other, not across from each other. So you're going to sit next to each other. Okay. And you're going to agree that you're going to eavesdrop on a conversation that is happening within this busy place. So you're going to agree on it. I don't care if it's 2 men, 2 women, old, young, doesn't matter. And then what you're going to do is you're going to really learn I call it engaged listening, because it has to do with focus and attention. You have to stop listening to everything else. And this is not easy, bro. And you're going to listen to just what's happening in that conversation. And then what you're going to do is you're going to answer some very simple questions. And the first question is why are they here? Second question is, what is the nature of the relationship? And number 3, what did each of them want to get out of the conversation? Dude, your answers could be very similar. They could be very different. But the conversation that happens between you and your friend who's doing this with you, this will become a weekly date. This is going to be something that you're going to want to do, because it's so fascinating that you're both hearing the same thing and having different sort of responses or different assumptions about what's going on. And that's like hands down. So that is like the core of what we call listening to listen. And that's the exercise I'd like to leave your audience with today.
Well, I think it's cool because if you listen to that, again, I would suggest do a Pulp Fiction type of listening to this podcast. Literally skip to the end, listen to it, but then watch it happen, because you watched that happen. Like, you did all the things that you're talking about. And I like to watch for this. And I'm not taking you through a test, anything like that, Matt. But I do like to scratch the surface of people and see if their bullshit is, if there's something, right? And when I say the bullshit, like, there's a lot of times where you'll watch a person, right? I remember having a guy on a nameless person on the interview or on the podcast one time, and the podcast actually didn't turn out. So the sound was off or whatever it was, and it didn't come through. It just sounded like a electronic. But their message was all about building people. And when I asked the question, what have you learned from your kids? They turned it around and told me all the things that their kids should learn from them.
Oof.
Right? Now, the reason I say this is because when in listening to you, experiencing you, you just permeate all the things that you've written. And I want to compliment you on it. And I want people to see that part of it, because it's something that is not very normal. It's not at all. And I believe that podcast didn't turn out for a reason when I did it. I was sad about it, but it worked out. Why I started the podcast, because my 2 kids, Maddox and McKenna. So what advice would you have for them? And if you could use both their names and call yourself Uncle Matt, it would be awesome.
I'm sorry. Give me their names one more time.
Maddox and McKenna.
Maddox and McKenna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maddox is now 13 years old.
Oh my God.
He's a sports guy.
Okay.
My daughter is 16, just got her license this week. She got her convertible
Oh my.
baby blue Beetle that she's driving to school every day. She calls it Whipping It. And you know what she named it? You know what she named her car? Take a wild guess. Baby blue bug convertible.
Herbie.
Bernard.
Okay, I would not have gotten Bernard in a million years, dude.
That's why my daughter is that. I mean, that's her comedy. Like, she is so hilarious. So she doesn't know this yet, but I got her the license plate holder that says, because she says, "Dad, do you want to go whip it?" Like, because whipping it is driving. Whipping it, like she's in her new whip. So it says whipping it on top, and then it says Bernard on the bottom, which is going to confuse so many people.
Yeah, but she'll love it. All right, so Maddox and McKenna, this is Uncle Matt. The one thing that I would like for you to take from this into your adult life, and even through your teenage life, is you will be more popular and more people will like you when you like more people. When you go into the world being loving and caring and genuinely wanting to befriend as many people as you can, being nice and kind to as many people as you can, you're going to find out very quickly that actually is going to make you way more influential in your entire life and your entire career by actually focusing first on trying to be friendly with everybody else.
Matt, you're unbelievable human. I don't want it to be 4 years, 4 years until we have another again, conversation, bro. Man. It is amazing. I would love to also at some point, I would love to have you at the Vibe Room, because the Vibe Room is a live version of the podcast. That's what you saw, the commercial for. Just because you being in the room and people being around you, and getting a chance to be able to meet you. And I haven't met you in person.
I know, dude. I know. How far are you from Huntington Beach?
Probably, I mean, depending on traffic, it could be maybe 45 minutes to an hour, or it could be 4.5 to 5 hours. Okay. No, I'm just joking. But it literally is, like, if you look at it mile wise, Huntington Beach is, I mean, maybe 60 miles from me. It's not far at all.
Okay.
When are you going to be there?
September.
In September? Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I could. September is a few months away.
Yeah, well, I think, God, dude, every time I know somebody from California, I don't know California, and it's humongous, dude. Yeah. And so, no, I will absolutely. Well, and the other thing is I am sure that there are going to be times where you're going to be speaking somewhere, I'm going to be speaking somewhere that's within proximity. I need to do a better job of making sure I just follow what the hell you're doing. And I'd love to see you in person. I'd love to give you a hug. Yeah. I love you, man. I really do.
It'd be amazing. We're going to have I'll make sure and have all your, website and all that stuff in the bio, so you guys can go check out Matt. And honestly, like, it's been a pleasure, man. I mean, it's funny too, because what I want to encourage every single person out there is, like Matt was talking about, is allowing yourself to go against the grain a little bit. Matt, you talked about that earlier before we even started recording, about your beard, or, you were like being a contrarian or changing things up, because it doesn't always have to be exactly the way that other people do it. It just is beautiful when you do it the way that you do. And Matt, you're an example to that. And I want to thank you, man. At the highest level. Stick around for a second too. We've got a commercial on the outro. These people that listen know about it. Stick around, because I got a couple words for you. Sound good? And Matt, you're officially off the hot seat, baby.
All right.
Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over. never came walking